we've also seen topic creation in Google Classroom. Now, if we want to create a question, a discussion question, like if I want to ask my students, is Java fully object oriented? So this way, if there are certain questions relating to new technologies or certain questions you want to get a student know-how on, you want the students to go search for the answers and come up with, discussions. Basically, in practice, we have these discussions with students, technical discussions or subject matter discussions in classroom. So this is an emulation for that, where you can create a question, any instructions. Usually questions are not given with due dates and they are not graded, so we can remove the points here. And if the question needs to fall under any topic, I say this is a question of topic 1, and can students reply to each other and can students edit answers. These two settings are in your hand as a teacher or as a course creator. So I've created a small question and I want to ask this question to my class. It's like an open-ended or open-threaded discussion, right? So within unit 1, you can see this question appears. So students can view the question, given their comments. So basically a live classroom discussion, a technical discussion, or you can say a common discussion thread can be started by creating questions. Next is that there is an option for creating materials. Click on material. Suppose I want to upload a Java Spring Framework tutorial, right? And I want students to view this video from the tutorial video, and probably as a part of extension of my course I want to do this. So I say create. What do I want to create? I want to create a document, slide, sheets, drawing, form, any of the sort, or I want to attach a video. I want to attach a link or a file. You can even attach PPTs, PDFs. You can upload assignments like this, lab assignments if you want permission for. I say it has to be a YouTube video. So click on YouTube. So directly it gives you an option to search on YouTube. Same search results that will appear on YouTube will appear here. Say I write Java Spring Framework and I search for this video content. So I see multiple links coming up. Now these are the same links that are hosted on YouTube. I say this is the video I really want my students to view or go about. I say add, right? All students can view this video under Java Unit 2. Post. So we'll see under Java Unit 2, there is a Java Spring Framework tutorial, right? And this is a YouTube video that has been created. The moment I click on this video, an in-place YouTube window opens up and the YouTube video is playing, right? So this is how you upload materials plus create material, everything in the classwork tab. We've done assignments, we've done quiz assignments, we posted a question, and now we've seen how to post material. Material can be of any type, as we see here. It can be a video link, it can be a file, it can be a URL, it can be anything. So this is how we are posting or creating materials or resources inside the classwork tab. Now there are certain other options such as reuse post. So if you have multiple classes, like if we have a morning and an evening batch and there is a post that I want to reuse, I will select what is the post that I want to reuse and next classes where I want to reuse those in, right? I want to reuse this post within the same class. So I want to extend this post to an assignment. So I'm reusing this post for assignment submission within the same class. So what will happen the moment I post this, along with the video tutorial uploaded earlier, there is an extension of the same tutorial where I'm asking also for an assignment submission. Similar kind of reusability can be provided between different classes. So like if you have a morning batch and an evening batch and you've created an assignment or a resource at one place, you can reuse that post within another class also. So that is, I'll request all participants to please mute yourself. Shrikant sir.
Shrikant sir, can you please mute yourself? Shrikant sir, Manish sir, Manish sir.
करणे सर आज नका येऊ तुम्ही नका मी नंतर मला उद्या उद्या बोलू
Okay. So this was for the reuse material. So right now I've been telling all about the different options when in create classwork section. We have seen creating assignments. We did quiz assignments in the earlier section. Now we've seen how to create a question and reuse post or post materials. Next is that stream page. See, all the activities that you have been performing appear as notifications on the stream page. So, whatever assignments or new uploads in resources are done by a teacher will be seen on the stream page. If you want to share some message with your class, say, if I want to post this announcement and I want to post it to all students in the class, I can do that. I can also schedule this announcement if I want. Here, besides post, there is a drop down arrow. If you click on that, there is an option for schedule or save as draft. So you can either post it directly, save as draft, and later go on editing it and then post it, or you can schedule it to a later date. I say I want to simply post. So this announcement is coming up in my class that you will be having a quiz on Unit 1 on August 22nd, 2020. So this is for announcements, this section here in your stream page. You can share something with your class as an announcement. Now, if I want to see what are the grades of my class, what are the grades of assignments being turned in. So I have created one question and one assignment and there is only one student in my class. So here is the complete grade-wise listing. This is a complete Excel sheet that is available to you, which shows what are the different grades of students when they turned in their assignments. So these are the basic options that are available with classes in Google Classroom. If you go back to the Google Class section, see if you see here, click on classes. There are two options. One is open gradebook and another is open Google Drive. So if you click on open gradebook, it directly takes you to the grade tab. As I said, gradebooks are just one click away. And in the second option, if you say take me to a Google Drive, this will take you to the Google Drive corresponding to your email ID where your classroom information is shared. So I had a Google Drive according in correspondence to my name, and in that Google Drive there is a folder automatically created, MCA semester 3 morning. I didn't create this folder, Google Classroom did. And inside this folder, whatever quizzes, whatever resources that I'm uploading are available here. So this was for the corresponding folders or Google Drives related to a Google class. Now I'll walk you through a G Suite account. This is my G Suite account or my organizational account registered with the G Suite for Education. In this account, there are certain additional privileges from a basic account which are available. Like these are the two classes that I have created. When I access a class, you see on the stream page, there are certain uh, on the stream page, there are certain additional operations which come up. One of which is, see here, generate meeting link. This was not there in your personal email IDs. This is a new addition with the G Suite for Education that Google Classroom is now incorporating synchronous learning also. So when you say generate meeting link, it will say, okay, you want to generate a meeting link. So generate a common meeting link for all times to come. So all students who are a part of this class, right, they can access this meeting link. I have created it for my another class. I'll show you. See, I generated this meeting link and I made it visible to I made it invisible to the students. I can later turn it on. If you click on this meeting link, it will redirect you to a Google Meet meeting, right? It'll ask you for certain settings, privileges, camera, microphone to be on. So all students can directly access this meeting from the Google Classroom page. So you have a Google Class, which is like, a one-stop solution for your synchronous and asynchronous needs. If you have a Google Meet app, this meeting will be opened up on the application, right? And you can uh, turn on your videos or microphone and you can probably take up a synchronous live video conferencing class using this application. This is one feature. Another feature is that whenever I create an assignment, in a G Suite account, we had options only till here, that is to add a rubric, right? This G Suite account also helps me get plagiarism or originality reports. I can say also ask the students to submit their plagiarism reports. So whenever a student will turn on an assignment in this section, a plagiarism report or an originality report will be automatically generated and it will be submitted, showing that how much is the assignment plagiarized, right? So this is another feature with the G Suite account which is not available with your personal email IDs. Grades, like this is a graded assignment. All three assignments have been graded. So out of 5 assignments, I have graded 3 assignments and I have not graded 2 assignments so far. So you can see the 3 assignments that I have graded. Student wise, I'm getting a complete listing, right? What were the grades? What was the status done? Was it done late? Was it done on time? So this is the grade book, which is sorted. So these were the basic features with the Google Classroom G Suite account as well as your personal email ID or a personal account. So I'll take up questions in the chat box before I move to the next section. So the drive thing is, ma'am, as I said, all the data that you have on Google Classroom is stored on your drive associated to your email ID. So you can see here the drive is accessible in this icon. So if you click on Google Classroom, the landing page, and click on this folder, it will lead you to a Google Drive or a Gmail or a Google Drive, which will have all resources that you have set up for your class. One more thing is that if you have certain classes, like we were talking about archiving a class, if you have certain classes you created for this section for this year and certain classes that you have archived and you want to see that where the archived class goes, main menu towards the top left, there are a section of archived classes. So these are my archived classes. These are the classes that I have been creating and using over the years. So when I create a class and I archive it, it runs into this section. So the main intention of this workshop was to give you a fair idea of Google Classroom, how to use it, what are the different features with it. Please mute yourself. Yeah. So basic outline has been laid. It is very user friendly. You just need to create an ID, you just need to create an account and proceed with, uploading material, resources, creating meeting links, turning in, asking students to turn in for assignments, viewing grade books, so on and so forth. So the main idea of the 2 and 3 workshops that we are going to do today is not like simultaneous hands-on implementation. It is that you need to have a fair idea of what the topic is, and if you want to refer to it further, the videos will be available and you can always work around and come up with questions if you have.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Madam, actually, I have a doubt in link that yeah, we are creating in that Google Classroom. Suppose I am inviting some students. Every time in each class, I have to send a new link, or they you will use the same initially generated link only.
Same link. So it's like you
Uh,
generate a link once and it appears here every time the same.
okay. Okay, ma'am. Suppose I am inviting my student,
Right.
and suppose tomorrow 10 o'clock is my class. Then a student is saying, "Sir, link is not opening." Then what I have to do? I am going for classwork. I am again clicking on that video. Then the new link, I am copying a new link and I am sending. Then only that particular student can attend that particular online session.
So, sir, this
So
link is actually created as an if you mute, actually it's on loudspeaker at your end. So my voice is echoing.
hello.
Yeah. If you can
Uh,
mute,
uh,
I'll answer.
uh, okay, madam.
So I'm saying, sir, like this link is for a Google Meet meeting that a host is creating. Like we have this WebEx meeting also, the link will remain the same, but the host has to start the meeting. So until and unless the host doesn't begin the meeting, people will be waiting in the lobby, but the meeting link will remain same. So this is the kind of feature. Every time you want to take a class, you'll have to first start the class. Like we do that in WebEx, or we also do that in Microsoft Teams, right? And once the host has started the class, the students can join. Does that answer, sir? How to compile students' performance and analysis in Google Classroom? You have an option for gradebooks, sir, that I demonstrated. So gradebooks will give you a complete listing of what were the student engagements during the semester. Where did he? How well did he submit his assignments? How timely were they, and so on and so forth. So you can download gradebooks and work on that. It's like your complete internal assessment, which we compile at the end of the semester. All right. So pertaining to certain time restrictions, I would now like to move forward and I will request all doubts to be taken up towards the end of the session. So let's start with the next topic. So I'll invite for all questions and we'll have a question answer round towards the end. So let's proceed further. Rubrics part also, sir, I'll discuss towards the end because I need to complete two more topics as per schedule. So towards the end, if you have any doubts, I will take them up. Okay, so the next part for today's session is mind maps. Mind maps is basically an aided tool which helps in visually organizing information over blended teaching learning mechanisms. So mind maps is not an LMS. It is an additional tool which will help you perform certain information dissemination or probably present information in a more visually organized format in an online teaching learning mechanism, right? So it's basically a hierarchical representation wherein ideas are depicted in a picture, giving a more clearer view to the participant. So what happens is when you are interacting on a physical basis, on a one-on-one basis, it is easier for you to communicate ideas and the teacher to actually explain what he or she wants. And gauging your body language, the teacher can correspondingly change his course of information dissemination. But what happens in an online teaching learning mechanism is that the entire visual imagination or representation of the concept goes haywire because we don't have tools like the blackboard or chalk and duster to actually represent the idea on the screen. We just have to visually speak it out. So there might be times where the student is not really you know at pace with what you're telling. He's not able to visually perceive the same picture which you are trying to say. So in such kind of a scenario, there are certain aided tools, one of which being the mind maps. It helps you to more artistically and analytically engage the brain of a student in a richer way, helping all its cognitive functions to work together, right? So basically it creates a two-dimensional space in the participant's mind and ties up ideas and concepts that are related to each other. So, as we say, a picture speaks a thousand words and is more easily understood than that of a verbal communication. So this kind of a tool helps when in an instructional setting, students who complete a concept or a concept map place concepts or ideas in a visual manner, logically relate them, and connect them to labels, to further understanding and meanings. Right. So they have been mind maps have been used as reflective tools that allow for the uh, of broadcast of broader associations to be made at the material level. So if you see here, they're also called as spider diagrams, and the main idea of depicting images in mind maps is to stimulate all the cognitive functions of the brain. Cognitive as well as metacognitive skills are a lot required and used in the blended or teaching learning mechanism. So, not just in education, mind maps have a great amount of usage in different areas. They're used in a lot of industries, corporates, for information dissemination and presentation. Right. So, as I said, where can you use a mind map? Firstly, to brainstorm ideas. If we are in a group, then brainstorming in the same physical space becomes a lot convenient. But when we are geographically dislocated, we're distributed, and we have to, collaborate. Students have to collaborate on group assignments, or they have to probably perform activities which enhance life skills in a student. Then, in such kind of scenario, it is very difficult to brainstorm together, sitting in different locations. So mind maps helps a lot in brainstorming ideas. In such cases, what happens in a common group study, a student creates a mind map and they start placing in ideas. So all of them are at the same page. They have the same representation with them. Next is problem solving, depending upon their understanding of what the problem is, depending upon their understanding of how they link concepts. Mind maps can be used in problem solving as well, especially for analytical subjects. For the teacher, from the teacher's perspective, like I will personally be using mind maps, and I use mind maps for my lesson plan. So rather than having a big table document wherein you have your lectures listed and your lecture hours mentioned, it is better to have a lesson plan. It's a more easier way to depict curriculum design and lecture planning using mind maps. So we'll also be doing an example where I'll be showing you how we construct a mind map for lesson planning or curriculum planning. Next is for lecture delivery. You and me, we as faculties, when we give lectures, it is very important for us to have bulleted points in front of us. So in such a case, when we have a mind map of a concept right in front of us, it is very easy for us to build upon the topic in an online teaching learning mechanism, and for the student to be at the same pace, for student to understand what the teacher really meant and how were the topics connected. We can also share our lecture delivery mind map notes with the class. Next
Common
is
problem solving.
Next is note taking in e-learning. Students in a physical classroom can take up notes, can have pen and paper, and they can be drafting out notes for their
Lesson
convenience.
planning, curriculum planning.
Ma'am, please mute yourself. Garima ma'am. Thank you. Right. So for in a physical classroom, students can be taking up notes, and it is pretty convenient that going with the pace of the teachers, the student is making notes. But what happens in an online kind of a scenario? It is very difficult to actually assimilate. There are network issues. Student lag behind two or three sub concepts. Like it might be happening with you also in these FIPs. A trainer is telling a concept, and you had network disconnections, so the entire topic goes off, so you don't get a link to the further topics. So in note taking also, in the case of e-learning or the blended model, the mind maps become of use. Next is memorization. So mind maps actually emulate a structure wherein you have main topic connected with subtopics, connected with further branched out subtopics. So this kind of a connection or a hierarchical linking maps to the brain very easily, because it's similar to the neuron design of the brain. That's why it's triggering up certain metacognitive skills. So it whatever you see in the mind map, it very clearly gets imprinted on your mind. So you will be seeing today the lecture dissemination mind map or the curriculum planning mind map I'll be designing for my course. You will tend to remember it even longer than other parts of the trainings that I have given. So you can see that for yourself. Next are presentations. Whenever the students are giving presentations, be it semester presentations or project presentations, or even in certain companies, people give corporate presentations. That is where they need to have the entire gist of the story in front of themselves. They don't have time to read through text, relate to, okay, where did I leave? What was the text that I missed in between? So this is a kind of an area, the presentation area, where mind maps come into play. Further helps in researching and gaining insights on complex subjects, because complex subject materials can be better understood when they are bifurcated in the smallest of terms. So block by block, students can build up the core concepts and reach to the clarity of a bigger concept. Right. There are no hard and fast rules to creating mind maps. It's very simple. You just begin with the main idea. You begin with the main concept. You go on drawing whatever you understand from the main concept, and you refine your diagram. You refine your design. So simple 3 steps: begin, draw, and refine. So as I said, there is a main idea, the central topic. So if I am doing a lecture dissemination, there will be a central topic of lecture, Java syllabus or Java lecture plan, right? So that main idea comes in between. Branching out from the main idea, certain subtopics. So always the main idea will be divided into certain subtopics, like a course will be divided into some units, and even a syllabus of a subject will be divided into certain chapters. So branching out from the main idea are certain subtopics, right? Connected by branches in the form of twigs and further sub branches, subtopics. So that is the basic representation of a mind map. So it looks like something like this. There is a central topic, there are some subtopics branching out from the central topics, and those subtopics have a group of related ideas, right? So see, the picture is so very hierarchically connected, it's so logical that there is no point of confusion as to what links to what. So we'll be creating such kind of a diagram. There are certain tools available, there are online forums as well as certain software available for free download, using which you can create a mind map. We'll be discussing that. Okay. So certain guidelines when you draw a mind map. First of all, main concept is the key. You begin from the main concept and you talk around the main concept only. The idea is not to deviate from the main concept. Next is, whatever be the main concept, sub-concepts have to be kept very short. So the idea is bullets here. You can't be writing paragraphs in sub-concepts or sub-ideas. You have to write very precise bulleted points, which you can further elaborate if you need in your presentation or lecture dissemination, but they have to be very crux and to the point. Next, keep it as simple as possible. Vary color, text, and appearance to give a different look or interconnection of certain ideas. But simplicity is the power. The simpler the mind map, the more readable it will be, the more understandable it will be, and the more it will be retained in your memory. So it has to be very simple, and it keeps on evolving. As I said, there are certain software which are available free of cost, and some have certain license versions also, using which you can develop mind maps. Name of which are Lucidchart, FreeMind, eDraw Mind Map. So I personally use eDraw Mind Map, the one mentioned here. If you simply type eDraw Mind Map on Google search, it will lead you to a free download version of eDraw Mind Map, Mind Master software. Right? Just download that software and you can start drawing with your mind maps. Basic versions, all that you need, are available free of cost. So we'll be discussing that ahead. Right. So with eDraw Mind Master, if you download the software, you land up at a base page called templates. This is the first landing page. It will not ask you to create any account. It will not ask you to submit any credit card details. It will just give you certain mind map variants or templates which are available free of cost. So if you see a radial map, a right map, tree map, and a north chart, these are certain templates of a mind map, predefined templates, which are available for free. When I say a template of a mind map, I mean a structure of a mind map. If I choose any one template and I start drawing, mind map will start evolving in the same structure. So if most commonly used structure is the radial map. So you have a central idea, and from that, different branches and subtopics are arising. Then there is also a right map where the mind map is evolving in only the right direction. There is a tree map which has a complete top to down hierarchy. Mind map is evolving from the root node to the child node. So different implementations available free of cost. If you use a paid version of the software, if you provide some money for buying the license of the software, then all these structures such as fishbone, winding timeline, vertical timeline, bubble map, sector map, these will be available for you. The only difference between these templates and the ones available for free of cost is the look and feel. So if you talk of a mind map, I think drawing a mind map with the radial map is the most common practice. So you ideally don't need to go for a pro version, right? Then apart from a structural template, there are also certain examples. So it might, really astonish you that mind maps are used in such great variety of applications. And rather than drawing your mind map from the scratch, this software provides you with certain pre-coded template examples. So like if I have to do a cost benefit analysis for a company, I can always select this cost benefit analysis template. I can start drawing or editing my content in this template. So these are certain predefined case studies where mind maps are used. Talking of which further, these are available templates, and these are also scenarios where people have used mind map. So as I said, we can use in lecture preparation, we can use in presentations, we can use in taking notes during a lecture, we can also use in curriculum design. But over and apart from teaching and learning, there are different areas such as cost benefit analysis, content marketing, all these kind of areas in the corporate where mind maps are used. Students can use mind maps to prepare for a job interview. They can also have project charters, design and develop project ideas using a mind map. A very important component here is a SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. So these kind of personality analysis can also be, used when you while using or while drawing mind maps. Certain personal operations or certain personal cases wherein you can use a mind map are like a goal setting. If you have a goal, how to reach to the goal, what should be the steps, what should be the intermediate milestones. So goal setting, wedding planning, and even your wealth planning, all these kind of personal use cases can also be implemented using a mind map. Right, so here are certain examples. This is how students can take notes for a mind map depending upon two books. I have two books for the same topic, and those two books on every separate chapter or every separate topic, what do they list out, right? And similarly, this can be done for a lecture. If a student is attending a lecture, then I'm attending, suppose, Java Unit 1, and in Unit 1, the teacher is teaching some Java internals, is teaching object-oriented basics. So all these kind of topics, what is the main crux of the lecture? What is that I had gained out from the lecture? Can be developed in this kind of a mind map. Then this is an example for exam preparation using mind map. If I have to prepare for an exam as a student for, say, suppose the subject physics. So what do I have to study? There are some topics which will be better explained in the book. So from the book, I have to study summary of chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. Or from the classroom notes, teacher says, okay, this part of the section, this part of your course is not available in your prescribed book. So I'm giving you explicit notes from these. So this is like a complete go-to at the exam time for the student. Student will never miss out on any information, right? And just topics to be covered in the exams can be mentioned here. If it's a unit exam or an internal exam, the subset of all topics, or probably what all topics will be important for the external exam, can be mentioned here. And when you're going to take the exam, there are certain checklists that the student needs to, always keep in mind. That make sure you have taken your pens, make sure you have your admit card with you, you're carrying your college ID card. So all those kind of information can also be jotted down inside a mind map. So you see, preparation becomes so easy. Everything is just at one place. You have to refer to this chart and everything is there. Next example is that if I want to write essays and if I want to create a mind map for this goes for any creative course that you have, any creative exercise that you undertake. First, you want to write down the main points or the main bullets, and then you want to probably elaborate on it. Or if you are going in for a debate competition, anything of that sort. You need to have your ideas in place. So that can also be arranged using a mind map. Financial planning, if on the personal basis or on the personal front, you want to plan for your finances that, okay, these are my assets, these are my goals, this is my target, and this is the network that I have, these are my, say, investment options. How do I scale up to so and so value by, say, 30 years of my life or 40 years of my life? So you can use mind maps in even planning for finances, personal finances. Then certain fun activities like birthday planning. If you want to plan for the birthday of your kid, then you can even have mind maps for that. There are so many things you need to take care of. You need to take care of locations, people you want to invite, activities you want to do at the birthday party, gifts you want to give. So everything, rather than having notes and making them writing everything down in pen and paper in hard copy format and probably finding it the next year, that, okay, I need to find out that diary where I planned the birthday of my first child for my second child. So it's better to have everything on a soft copy format. You can store all this information on the cloud and you can always access it again and again whenever you want. So such are some use cases of mind maps. Then I have also given certain more example. You can use mind maps in areas like creating storyboard, attaching multimedia documents. These are certain ways to enrich a mind map. We'll see when we create one. Right. Now going for the main creation for mind map, in the eDraw Mind Master software that I downloaded free of cost, I've chosen a radial map. This is my basic template. And when I choose a radial map, this is the first screen that I get. I get a main idea coming in just the center of the page. So first you have to start with the main idea. Suppose I want to design my lesson plan, or I want to design my course curriculum for the course Java programming that I intake, right? So you can say the main idea is Java syllabus planning. I want to go about the syllabus planning of Java. Now, main idea or central idea will always be one. There can be many sub ideas, there can be many branches, but the main idea will always be one. So when I say I have written that my main idea will be syllabus programming, the syllabus planning, on that main idea, there is this plus sign here. When you click on this plus sign, it will lead to the creation of a subtopic, right? So I say, okay, in my syllabus, there are 5 units. There are 5 subtopics that I have. Okay, so first is Java Unit 1, Unit 2. So I'll create Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and Unit 4.
Madam, can you please repeat the link, madam? Please start.
Okay, ma'am. So this session is for demonstration purpose. It is not practical hands-on. I will provide the link. You can do it at your own, but this is just that I'm showing for demonstration. You can type this on Google and you'll get the download link. First link will be for the download of MindMaster software. You don't need to perform practical implementation of this as a necessary part of the session. You just need to probably go through whatever I'm saying. Right. So I had one main idea. I had Java syllabus planning, and from that syllabus planning, I had 4 units that came up. I had unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 units that I have to plan for. Right. So one main topic and 4 subtopics. These are called subtopics, and subtopics are connected to the main topic in the form of a branch. This is a branch. Right. Next, in those 4 topics, there will be certain other components also. Like in unit 1, there will be some subtopics. Unit 1 is like one section of my course. That section contains further subtopics or sub branches. So I say, I'll click on a plus sign here and create a subtopic to a sub branch. So this was the main branch. This is a sub branch, and now I have a subtopic. What is the kind of subtopic that I want to create? I want to create the components or the contents of my first unit. I say my first unit comprises of basic of OOPS, JDK JRE fundamentals, JVM internals, classes, objects, and dot class file format. These are the topics that I need to cover in my first unit, right? So I have mentioned the main syllabus name, all units, and I have created subtopics. This way, every unit will have certain components. Like unit 2 will have exception handling, streams, multi-threading, socket programming. Unit 3 will have further more topics and so on with unit 4. So this gives you a fair idea when you look at this image that this teacher is trying to teach Java, which has four major components or four major sections as a part of the course. That are the four main topics: unit 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in every topic, there are certain subtopics or there are certain core fundamentals that the teacher wants to cover. So looking at this layout, you actually know what are the components of my syllabus and how I'll be taking them up. I'll first be covering unit 1, then I'll be covering unit 2, 3, and so on, right? So we have created a main topic from which we have given rise to certain subtopics and constituent branches of those subtopics. Now I say, okay, I was able to mention the details of my course. I was able to mention what topics come in and how should they be arranged. Are there certain operations that I want to perform with this? Can I make this mind map even more intuitive? Yes. What will I say? Page formatting. You see here, whenever you will have this window with eDraw MindMaster, right besides this window on the right panel will be certain page formatting options, right? Page formatting will change the look and feel of your mind map. So if you click on this option here, this will say, okay, you want to change the structure, you chose for a radial map, you want to move to any other structure, any other representation, either darker or lighter versions of that, you can do that here. Next, you will say, okay, how do you want your topics and subtopics to be arranged? Do you want it to be left aligned, right aligned, evolving from the center, right? So all the basic alignment operations that are available to you will be mentioned in this option. Next is, you will say, fine, you have seen how topics are related to subtopics. What about further branches or further detailings? These detailings, how do you want them to come? You want them to come in any one of these representation, you can select, right? So these are certain page formatting options that you can have in order to format the look and feel of your basic mind map that you have drawn. Now I say topics can also be related. There can be a topic in unit 3 that is related to unit 4. Like I say, event handling in unit 3 is taught using AWT framework. The same topic is also a part of Swings framework in unit 4. So how do I establish this relation? On the top panel in the main tab, you will see there is this option called relationship, right? The moment you click on this option and you direct a relationship from event handling in unit 3 to Swings framework in unit 4, automatically the student, when he looks at this mind map, he'll understand that these two topics are interrelated. The teacher has written that this topic being taught here will also be extended in unit 4, right? So you can have certain kind of topics in your syllabus also that are basis for certain topics that are to flow or would be extended in certain advanced topics. So you can set up relationship amongst topics using this way, like home relationship, and you can set up a relationship between this event handling and Swings framework. You can set up relationship between collection and Java Beans. Whichever topics are related or need to have a relation can be related using this relationship option here, right? Next are callouts. If there are certain branches for which I want to give a comment or I want to understand the expand the understanding, because what does MindMap do is that it restricts me in terms of depiction. It makes me depict only the core points or the bullet points. Now, if I want to give a certain description or a comment, like there is this one topic in my unit 1, JVM internals, which I want to take at the end of the unit, although it is mentioned in the first or the second part of the syllabus, but I want to personally take this topic towards the end because I feel other basics like JRE, JDK fundamental, and OOPS, these need to be developed before I talk of JVM internals. JVM internals is a complex topic. So in my lecture planning or in my syllabus design, what will I do? I will mention a call out. Under the home tab on the top panel, there is a call out option, right? This call out option you can attach with any one sub branch and say add a comment here, which means I've written I am going to take up JVM internals towards the end. This is a topic that I am going to cover at the last of the unit. So when a student will see this syllabus plan or the syllabus design, he will understand, okay, ma'am has not covered this topic, she will be doing it at the end. Because even when I need to study personally, I should be taking it up at the end. That's the flow that she wants me to maintain, right? So you can add call outs. Next is certain topics or subtopics might be related, right? So I've created a branch, I've mentioned certain topics here, and I said these all topics are related or a part of fundamental. So I can create something called a boundary, grouping boundary. So in the same panel, besides call out, there is another option called boundary. What will boundary do? When I establish a boundary between different topics, subtopics, it gives a representation that this unit is related. These topics are related, right? And these need to be taken up at once. This boundary is very helpful when your mind map actually extends. So right now we have a very small mind map, but probably when the student will be taking notes, then the mind map would be very extensive, or for presentation ideas the mind map would extend a lot. So in such cases, when you want to enhance the readability, when you want to make it explicit to the student that these topics are related, this is one boundary, all topics coming in under this boundary are one group, so you can explicitly specify that. So this is done using boundaries. Now for the boundary or any topic, you want to provide your own summary that reading this unit or understanding this unit you will gain so and so out of it. So you can have a summary option here, right? You see here in the same panel I'm in the home panel. There is relationship, callouts, boundary. The next is summary. So topic summary is when you want to give the summary of certain topics, like if in one lecture a teacher has taught say 5 topics and the student is taking in notes, so at the end of 5 topics the student can give his or her understanding that depending on these 5 topics I could understand this, and this was taken up in this class, right? So similarly for my syllabus planning, I have set up a summary wherein the summary I'm giving the learnings of the unit, whatever be my learnings of unit 2, that once you are aware of this unit or once you will be completing this unit, you should be able to create basic Java programs which should handle exceptions, and you should also be implementing concepts of multi-threading and sockets. So this summary section is important when you want to map course outcomes, right? In an outcome based education scenario, when you want to map course outcomes to certain course topics, so at the end of certain course topics you can mention the course outcome, so the student will be able to see, okay, in this lecture design, in the syllabus design, if I've completed these topics, I should be having this competency. If I am not having these competencies, it means I need to revisit or ask teacher for the help. So this is for summary. Next are marking topics. Now there can be a scenario, marking is done right besides, if you see, right besides summary, there is an option called mark, right? Before I start marking, I'll answer this question. Sir, I'll be discussing this also, but this mind map can be stored in any kind of a format. You can store it as an image, you can export it as a Word file, you can even create table of contents from this mind map, you can even publish it as a PDF file or as a PPT also. So all formats are possible. Yeah. So it makes it even convenient for us to, design a mind map, and then that lecture plan and table of contents manner which we need to generate can automatically generate it from this mind map. I'll show how towards the later half of the session. Next option here is marking a mind map or marking certain subtopics. Now, why is this important? Like in my unit 1, I had certain topics, right? And they are mentioned in a certain way in the course. Now, I want to probably have a priority associated. So whenever you click on mark section, this right panel gets populated with certain items, first of which being priority. So if I want to prioritize my subtopics, like if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 topics, and I say, okay, what will be the flow of my class? What topic should I take up first? First, I will take up basic of object-oriented programming. Then I'll take objects and classes. Then I will tell the students about the dot class file format. Then I'll talk of JDK, JRE fundamentals and JVM. So I have associated a priority number. How have I generated a priority here? So you can mark a priority to the individual subtopics. So this will really help the student understand, okay, there were 5 topics and I have to read them in this way, right? So there are certain scenarios in our course wherein topics are also repeated, like some units have repeated topics. So we first tell the student, okay, this topic you will find in unit 1 also and you'll find in unit 4 also. Unit 4 is an extension, first do unit 1. So you can prioritize subtopics to this. You can save the file, ma'am, at any location. It gives you an option in file menu. You click on save as, and you pick up any location for saving the file, any folder that you want, any course related drive that you want. You can save it at any location. It does not have a specific choice for a workspace, right? So you can mark priorities. Next is you can mark progress also, that okay, priorities I've given along with my subtopics. I can also be updating my syllabus plan, as and when I'm taking lectures side by side, also I'm updating my syllabus plan. So my syllabus is now 50% complete or 60% complete, 70% complete. I can go on upgrading the progress of my syllabus plan also. So the student will be on the same page with you. Student can keep on checking that syllabus plan which you have uploaded in your LMS, and you're updating on a regular basis. Okay, topic 1 of unit 1 has been 100% complete. Topic 2 by the end of second week will be done. So by first month, unit 1 is completely done. Ma'am is at 100% progress bar, right? So this is for progress. Then there are certain other options like face, arrows, flags. Flags are like if something is really important, you want to mark that, you can use it, right? So some certain other options also available for marking. Next are formulas. Now, if your subject is a little mathematical, or you want to, if the student is taking up notes, doing a subject that has certain formulas involved in it. So there a formula editor which is available with eDraw MindMaster. Right besides mark in the home panel, there is a formula option. Click on formula. So formula typing window will open up, wherein you can write the mathematical formula that you want to depict or you want to write, right? Whatever formula you write in this formula editor will come and will get stored inside the corresponding subtopic or the sub branch where you are editing. So this is how you can add formulas. You can add mathematical equations to your mind maps. Next are certain views. So this is the basic mind map which we have created. Now the mind map can be exported in certain formats that I was talking of, right? So there is this option of outline. If you see outline, which is available in 3 dots in the right panel, outline will give you the outline or the hierarchy of your mind map, how your mind map is designed, right? And this outline can be exported in the formats mentioned here. It can be exported as a Word file, it can be exported as an Excel sheet, even as a PowerPoint presentation. So this is what I was talking. You develop a mind map, you plan your course in a mind map, and you export that course into a corresponding Word file, an Excel file, or a PDF, right? So you can do that using the outline option, which is available in the right panel, the 3 dots. Fine. Next is task setting. So whatever beneath the mind map, the 3 dots, you can see the last option in the form of a calendar icon or a task icon is a task bar. So it can be possible that you want to plan your mind map as well. You want to generate certain notifications with it. Not just do I want to generate a hierarchy that what am I teaching, what are the components, so on and so forth. I also want to attach timelines that, okay, this is my Java syllabus that I want to start, say on so and so date. I want to start on 1st of August and I want to complete it by say 30th of November 2020. So I will associate a task or a timeline next to it. We can set up priorities for the task, and you can also, set up durations or milestones corresponding to tasks. So this will create a sort of a, task or a timeline attached to your mind map, which means you will have a proper time wise listing that according to the time duration that you have set up, what should be your progress, how much should you have progressed. So this is task setting. You can set up task for the main branch, and also you can set up task for the individual branches also. So not just setting up a task or a timeline for the entire course, you can also set up task or timeline for individual subtopics. That is also there. Next is slideshow. Mind maps can be exported as Word files, PDFs, Excel sheets, and also, it can be used for direct presentation. So probably in the first class or in the orientation class, you can start with, presenting the mind map to your students. So rather than opening it in a creation or a creating editor, you can start with a slideshow, right? So right above in the top ribbon next to home, there is a section for slideshow, right? Slideshow can be using multiple ways. Either you can slideshow the entire topic listing, or you can slideshow branch wise, or you can, slideshow even twig wise. So all options are available here. I say start slideshow, start from the beginning, the first branch, main branch, and then the sub branches. So this is how the slideshow would look. First, the main branch would come. So you can demonstrate it to your students on an online mode. Okay, this is your main topic, and this is the time duration as per the academic calendar. We have to complete this course. And in this course, first I'll be covering with unit 1. These are the topics taken up in this prior, any special call out that you want to mention, and so on and so forth for other sub branches. So this is a slideshow based on certain sub branches, right? If you want a full map presentation, then in slideshow, traverse topics, you can say first option, traverse topic from selected slide. So this will do a topic wise presentation. Earlier it was main topic and then all subtopics. Now I want to say, okay, every subtopic within this unit 1 should be presented individually. So this is how you can do it. Traverse branches, traverse topics as well as branches. When you say traverse topics, from the main topic, it will only traverse subtopic and show the complete subtopic listing. And if you say traverse branches, then within a subtopic, all branches will be traversed individually, right? Now there are certain advanced options. All options present inside the advanced tab next to slideshow are options which are available with pro version or paid version. Most of them are, right? So the first one here is a Gantt chart or a Gantt chart operation option. So Gantt chart is, we have set up timelines, we have set up tasks relating to our mind map. These tasks can now be presented in the form of a Gantt chart, in the form of a timeline. So this option is available in the Gantt chart option in advanced options, right? Next are, if I want to export my mind map, for that file, click on file and click on export. So you can export either as PDF, HTML, or any graphics file, any kind of file format, as an Evernote file also. So all different file formats to which you want to export your mind maps are also present. Generally, they are exported as images, right? Okay. So these were the basics with mind maps. So now I'll request you to please write in your queries related to mind maps, if any doubts, if anything that you wish to ask for, even in Google Classroom. Any queries, please write in the chat box. You can unmute and ask as well.
And sometimes the data will be related to the healthcare system. So can we upload the records to the Google Classroom? Any problem? Because sometimes we need to take cases in that way from healthcare system.
Okay, ma'am. So you want to upload which kind of data to
Confidentiality is an issue. So whether we need to take separate this thing, ma'am?
No, no, ma'am. Confidentiality is included as a clause with the Google Classroom usage. So they completely ensure Google has the security policies. So there is nothing explicit you need to mention there.
Thank
No, no, sir. There is no option for displaying single question in a quiz. Also, you can set the duration. Means you can set when the quiz should be available until when should it be available. But you can't explicitly give the question duration. That okay, this question should appear on the screen for only 10 seconds. That is also not available. Google Classroom is definitely an LMS, sir. It's a cloud-based LMS. Yes, there are a lot of plugins, but it depends on what type of accounts you are using. Are you using a G Suite account or are you using a personal account? So since it's a cloud-based LMS, so obviously there will be certain privileges and features which will be present in a paid version more than. So rubrics can be set up for assessing while creating assignments, as I've shown even in your personal account as well as in the G Suite account. When you create an assignment, then in your right panel, it gives you an option to upload a rubrics file, right? So you can upload your rubrics file at that time, and that can be used for assessment. Generally, it is done in case of ungraded assignments. Yes, sir. Till I am aware, there are plugins to integrate at least Microsoft Teams successfully with Moodle Cloud. I've not done Cisco WebEx. So for at least Teams, I can vouch, but yeah, there have to be options. There have to be plugins for more accounts. I'll have to check on that. A G Suite account is something, sir, where there are two types of accounts. One is your personal email ID, like your Gmail account, my Gmail account. Another is an organizational ID, an ID that ends with a .edu or is an organizational domain that you register explicitly with G Suite for Education. So when you sign up for Google Classroom, you do that either in your personal usage profile or you sign up with G Suite for Education. So when you do it with G Suite for Education, your account is actually a school account or a more privileged account which has certain education related features like rubrics, meeting links, synchronous integration of Google Meet. All this is available, originality reports, right? All this is more available with a G Suite account. Plus, there are certain limits that are extended with a G Suite account, which are a little limited in a personal account. So, ideally, if you talk in the broader sense of the picture, is that a G Suite account is more suited for educational purpose, right? And yes, it also has certain paid plans. Being a cloud version, it has certain paid plans. Yes, eDraw for certain options will be asking you for having a license or a paid version. So that is what the basic version. If you want to create a basic eDraw or basic operations of just creating a mind map, you can use that in eDraw Mind Master. Generally, you will not be requiring paid version, but yeah, certain options which are showing a pro account or a pro version will be paid. Organized content list will be a little difficult, sir, but if say you want to draw mind map for an already existing template. Like if I want to do a cost benefit analysis, then there is a template available. I don't have to go on creating that kind of a mind map. I just have to change the values in the template available. So you can make use of existing template and fill in your data. You will be saved from the overhead of connecting and creating everything. Apart from eDraw MindMaster, Lucidchart is very easy. You can use Lucidchart if you want. Plus, there are certain online versions also available, like online accounts, online software. But I will prefer that you use eDraw. It suffices to most of the needs. Anything else? Shall I begin with exam.net? Where do you want to save file, ma'am? You want to save the eDraw mind map file, or you want to probably show content on Classroom? What is the question pertaining to? If you can clarify. So if you see this here, this is my actual eDraw file that I have been discussing in the presentation. So on file, there is an option save as, right? So it gives you options where to save the file. You want to save the file on Google Drive, so it will upload it to the Google Drive and you can directly have your students take the link of Google Drive. You have a personal cloud or a Dropbox, you can do that as well. Or if you want to store it on your computer, right? Then you can click on browse, and wherever you want to have the path, you can set up the file, right? Okay. So the next topic that we have here is exam.net, the last topic for today. So exam.net is actually an application over the web which helps you create very secure exams, create, post, and conduct very safe exams online, right? So exam.net is not an LMS. It is just an option. It's a venture. It's a software application hosted over the net. It's a web app that helps you to create examinations in a remote manner, right? So it was initially the idea was conceived in Sweden. So it is a Swedish application wherein with exam.net teachers can carry out high stakes exams on the students' own digital devices. So the main idea of exam.net is to conduct examination in a geographically remote or a distinct fashion, right? Like we are doing these days today. So, what happened with the advent of the COVID pandemic? The worst affected area in academics were examinations, and that is the biggest deliberation till date, if or not to take up examinations, how to take up examinations, how to ensure that absolute integrity is maintained when the student is giving an examination sitting at his own residential location, how to ensure that there are least number of cheating modes that are available for a learner when he takes up such examinations, and how to actually validate the authenticity of such exams and compare them to that of a conventional model that we use. So pertaining to these all questions, there are a lot of options available online. We have seen that we can conduct examinations in Moodle, we can create certain assessment modes in Moodle, and there are certain plugins which help you ensure that the exam is a safe browser exam. So all these kind of examinations wherein we say student has to be given the least amount of flexibility to go outside the rules of integrity while appearing for an exam, such examinations are called safe browser. So the biggest threat is whenever a student is giving an exam on a browser or over the internet, he can always copy and look for answers. So one alternative we have is that we take up examinations using Moodle. Moodle is a lot familiar. Another option, another alternative, which is very widely used these days, is exam.net. So, exam.net is basically a site, and it's a stable and robust platform that works well with your PCs, MacBooks, Chromebooks, iPad, and it's actually intended to work in a blended technical environment with different hardware and operating systems, right? So the platform is based on modern web technology with a fully encrypted client server communication. So student texts are automatically saved, and the teacher can monitor student materials and status also in real time. So apart from ensuring that the student is not just resorting to certain unfair means or not switching browsers to copy and cheat, it also provides the availability, the synchronous availability of a teacher while the student is taking up an exam. It was so famous, and it was such a success in Sweden that every third Swedish student in a specific year and course uses exam.net during national examination days. So we can imagine if for the purpose of conducting national level exams in Sweden, exam.net has been used, then we can imagine the power and the robust compatibility of the system. Right. So moving further, I'll discuss certain basic features of exam.net, and then I'll walk you through its very easy user-friendly interface, wherein we'll be creating an exam and then we'll be accessing an exam as a student, right? So it's very convenient, very easy. Biggest feature, biggest plus point with exam.net is it helps you conduct a safe browser exam. It locks up the student's freedom to switch between browsers. So most of the exams can either appear as full screen modes, like I'm giving a presentation in full screen. Till the time I don't exit full screen, I can't really perform any other operation on my system. So this kind of a full screen mode is called a safe browser implementation, one of the safe browser implementation, where a student can have a full screen mode running on a system and he's giving an examination. He's going for the concept of taking an exam, and he till the time he does not close the window, he cannot do anything else. And the moment he tries to minimize or close the window, the exam gets submitted. Right. So this is one application. Another one is also where a student can his browser activity can be restricted. If not as a full screen mode, the exam is coming in as a tab on a browser, and the student cannot switch tab, like, right? So he doesn't have the flexibility to open up a new tab or switch a new tab. So this kind of examination is called a safe browser exam or a safe exam browser. Next is you say, okay, fine, this is convenient. We can make sure the student is giving a safe exam in a locked up browser mechanism or mode. But how can you be sure that he's not accessing physical resources? He can also be having a book that he's opening up at his level, or certain notes that he's referring to, and he's looking up for answers. So for that, there is this feature of webcam monitoring. right? So when you combine these two features of safe examination browser and webcam monitoring, this is actually the actual scenario in which your international level certifications have been conducted since years. So if you have ever opted for an international certification, say CCNA, OCJP, or any Microsoft certification, this is how it is done. It is a safe browser exam. The only thing is you are first of all asked to move to a location where you'll be webcam monitored. But now that webcam monitoring can also be possible at your home, your system's webcam needs to be constantly open, and there will be complete video recording. So your eye movement, your hand movement, everything is recorded, and that is how international certifications have been carried out till date. So you don't need to actually go to USA for getting a CFA certification. All CFA level 1, 2, 3 certifications, Chartered Financial Association, all associate certifications are carried out in a remote manner. From any part of the world, you can appear for a CCA exam. So the same was when I appeared for my OCJP exam. It was a safe exam, safe browser exam, and at the same time there was constant web monitoring. So the same mode has been followed since many years. It is just that it is something new to us, and accepting it in all forms of integrity is a matter of question, right? Next is another feature with exam.net is that it helps you have a live teacher chat. So this mechanism is where I, as a teacher, have hosted my exam, and in a live scenario also it happens the students ask for certain questions. So students question, ma'am, what will be this question? What does this mean? I think there is a mistype, or I'm not able to understand this. So if there is any such kind of a real-time query which the student is facing, teacher can be available via live chat, right? So if I've hosted an exam, I can be getting a live chat from the students. Students can type in any question they have for me, and on the other hand, if I am accessing my exam.net portal, uh, that question will be coming to me as a chat, and I can probably go on resolving his query. So this scenario here where the student says, I don't know, I had this doubt, this question was not clear, this is ambiguous, this should not be marked, the mark should not be considered. All these kind of scenarios also catered using exam.net. Next are image and handwritten solutions. Now, not everything can be typed, not everything can come in the format of multiple choice questions. You have certain mathematical subjects, you have subjects which require certain modeling, like you have unified modeling based subjects wherein students are supposed to create diagrams and models. All these kind of solutions can also be uploaded on an exam.net exam, right? So when a student is taking an exam with exam.net, he is given an editor space where he can write answers. He's also given an option to upload images or handwritten solutions if he wants for a particular question. So that is another feature. And the next is broken connectivity restart. So this is also a scenario where while giving an exam, student says, oh, my network just went off, and I could not appear for the complete exam, and the exam got submitted. So whenever there is an uneven breakdown or an uneven close to an exam, the exam.net hosted examination next time when the student tries to log in, it will identify this was an unaccounted failure, the system terminated abruptly, and the exam will begin from that point. Otherwise, what happens is that whenever you take an exam, if you will host an exam on Google Classroom, or if you'll host an exam on Moodle, and the student says, I had connectivity issues, I had connectivity failure, the light just went off, I'm staying in some remote areas of Uttar Pradesh, or probably I'm in Bihar where the situation is very much impacted due to flood. So what you have to do is, next, as a teacher, you have to create altogether a new exam. A new question paper needs to be set up, because the exam is already out. Even if the student has accessed one question, the paper is out. So you have to create new exam. So you can't take that kind of a risk at the time of university level examinations. You can't take that kind of risk when the university says, I'm giving out an external examination and please take it in all due seriousness. So such events are also backed up by the feature of broken connectivity restart. So the moment a student's connectivity is broken, the exam will be picked up from the point where he left. And whatever number of minutes are left for the student to complete the exam, will be given to the student. So those are some features of exam.net. Those are certain base characteristics. That is why this tool is so famous. It is so famous with the teacher end. So now let's see how we use exam.net. I'll take you through a practical demonstration. Right. So exam.net is very, very easy to use. Right on your browser, just simply type exam.net and press enter. Right. So this will lead you to the front page or the landing page. This is a landing page of exam.net. It will be visible in this mode where there is the student option and there is a teacher login. So this is the same login page for the student as well as for the teacher. In order to take up an exam, student just needs to have an exam key, right? So exam.net relieves you from the headache of enrolling students, opening up the exams to particular set of students. Only student need to have an exam key. So as a teacher will be creating an exam, that exam will have a unique exam key. And when I share that exam key with my batch, with my group of students in the class, they will be able to access this exam just using that exam key. All the information that I require from the student end, later I'll be taking in the registration part, right? So here on the teacher tab, say if you already have a teacher ID or a password, you can log in through the same. If you don't have, you click on register, right? You select your country and you select your region. Then you select your school. If your school is not registered, like my school is not registered, here is a list of registered schools. No worry. You can always add a new school. Click here to add a new school, right? So if I am from Bharti Vidyapeeth and I want to set up an exam on exam.net, my school is not registered. So I will first create a school, right? I will enter city name and I will create a school name, right? So this way you can add your information. I already did that. So for my school, right? For my school, this was my landing page, right? So in this page, you'll see here my school option. My school is not registered, right? And there is only one colleague who has registered this school with her email ID. So when you're creating your school, what will happen is that all faculty members who create exams on exam.net will be a part of the same school. So you'll be having your same local group, right? And that will be your own group or a bunch of faculties. So this is the landing page. You can click on exam.net here. I have logged in as a teacher. I can create an exam. I can view my exam lists, or I can see the surveillance or results of the exams which I've already opened, right? So if I have to first create a new exam, this is probably the easiest portal to create an exam. There is literally no technical details which are involved. Everything is very intuitive. You set up, you create an exam name, say sample, or I say internal test, right? Now this is the name of the examination. This name, with this name, student will be able to, locate this exam in the exams list, open exams list. Then next section says, what are the type of digital questions? You need to, you want to attach digital questions. You want to give a PDF file. You want to explicitly write questions. You want to construct an exam with different question types like fill gap, multiple choice, whatever type of questions you have. I say I want to use a PDF file. I've already created an exam and I want to upload that exam. Like we have our question papers. So you can reuse that question paper here. I've uploaded a PDF file. No, sir, you don't need an organizational ID for this. You just need to mention your organization's name. And exam.net cannot be integrated with Moodle Cloud, sir. It is altogether a different application. It will work standalone. Right? So this is the PDF file, and I say upload this file. Close. Right? Right. So I have uploaded a PDF file. You can write exam questions. You can create forms like we have done in Google Classroom or Moodle. You can create multiple choice question, fill gap, or enable auto grading, right? You can do all these features using this option here. So whichever type of question you want to create explicitly also, and it can be a mix of them also. You can create certain questions by uploading a PDF file, right? And certain questions in this format. So it can be a mix of both. Now, student information. This is where I've created an exam. I've uploaded a question paper, which was a PDF. Now, certain student information. What type of information do I want to gain from the student? I want the student to write his first name, last name, email ID, class name, which type of information? I say the student ID, more than one, right? Student ID is the username that the school uses and not social security number or similar. So this is just a description of what the student ID means. In our interpretation, we can take the student ID to also be the enrollment number, right? So you can, whichever type of information you want the student to fill, you can select from the section. Next,
Please
there
repeat
is
the process.
right. So student information is that section wherein you can select what type of information do you want to enter as a student when you access the exam. What type of information is compulsory? First name, last name, email, class. So first name, last name is automatically selected. You can deselect it also. It will say either first name or email, one of which is mandatory. So you say, okay, first name is mandatory. Let's take first name and let's take email ID. This information I want the student to enter, because what will the student do? Student will access the exam using an exam key, right? And after accessing the exam, student will be asked to enter these details. So it is not that you have to register the student has to just know the exam key, right? Then there is this option of an anonymize exam. If you want to mask student identity, if you want to mask student identity while taking up an exam, right? If you want, like in, we have this case in our internal examinations wherein we ask the student to just write enrollment number. We want a blinded answer script. We don't want to see which student has given what answer, because we don't want the teacher to be partial. So if you have such kind of a scenario, then you can also anonymize the exam. So do not ask for any details from the student. The student just needs to have an exam key. He will submit the exam and you will get a report that, okay, this user has submitted this exam. Then in student workspace, do you want to permit a writing area? Yes, I want to permit a writing area. If you don't want to permit a writing area and you just want student to upload file, that option is also available. But I say let the student have a writing area. It's a subjective exam, right? I want the student to give me certain answers in writing. Spell check should be on or not. And do you want to give the student the capability to have handwritten solutions with mobile phones? If you say yes to this, then the student can upload images. This is where I was talking of handwritten solutions in case of mathematical subjects or subjects which have diagrams or modeling, right? Next are accessibility tools. This is if you want translation help, that is if your student is going to access in any other language, you want the exam to be translated, right? If you want synonyms or speech synthesis. So this is for accessibility, other options which are available. We generally do not require this. Audio files. Now if probably you are a music course and you want students to upload certain videos, audio files, certain recordings of their song or singing, so you can select what audio file you want to upload, using which format. You can specify the format here. Do you want to use the student to use a USB stick? Yes or no, right? So for audio files to be submitted, this is the section. Then certain subject related tools, you want the student to be given a drawing tool. You want the student to digitally draw on the workspace or on the answer space. So you can say yes to that. Calculator, some subjects, this is not very popular in our country, but in foreign countries, calculators are allowed. So if in certain subjects you want to have a calculator being, available to the student, you can select this option while giving the exam, right? Similarly, is for other mathematical formulas, you want certain custom documents or cheat sheets, then you can give that. Now, if the student gives the programming tools, if you want to give students programming tools like JavaScript or Python, right, which means the student will be given a sort of a code editor which understands the code of JavaScript or Python. So if you want to enable that, you can do it here, right? Next are certain external resources. External resources is any external resource that you want to upload, video link or anything as a help to conducting the exam, that you can do here. This also generally we will not use. Now this is the section that is used for uploading exams, and now we have specified certain student related settings. Next is that if we want to Next is that if we want to have certain security features, we want to have a high security mode, right? High security mode means the student needs to download the safe browser plugin that I was talking of. The moment I select this, right, student will need to download the safe browser plugin. I will show you on this site where the safe browser plugin is available. Moment this mode is selected, student will be first asked to download the safe browser plugin. Only then can he take up this exam, because I say this is a highly secured exam or exam in high security mode, so it needs a safe browser plugin. Until and unless the student is not downloading that plugin on his system, and that plugin has certain requirements, right? So until and unless that is not downloaded, the safety mode will not be enabled, right? But if you want to create an internal exam, you don't want a safe browser, you just want probably a class assessment quiz or something, you can say allow in any browser, right? So this is for that. And now we say create exam. So you see here, internal test. In my exam list, I can see internal test created on date, and I have to explicitly open the exam, which means I have to make the exam available to the students. These are certain settings. After creating the exam, you can edit. You can see the surveillance result, which means how many students have undertaken your exam, or you can preview how your exam looks. I'll say preview exam. Begin exam as a student. So this is how my exam will look. This will be the question paper that I have uploaded, and this will be my answer sheet. And here you can see an option for teacher chat also, right? It will give me the time duration. If I want to change the time duration, I'll just show you how you do that, right? And you can submit the exam. Say submit it. This was the preview. Fine. Now you see here this exam key that has been generated. This is very important. This is very critical. This is the exam key that you need to share with your students. Please mute yourself. I request you. Yeah. So this exam key
તો
is
ભાઈ એ
very
પ્રમાણે પોસ્ટ ગ્રુપમાં કરી દેજે ભાઈ દરેકને પોઝિટિવ ઇન્ક્વાયરી કરીને આપણે કેટલી હા તે બધું આપણે એકવાર
Dr.
લખી
Ajay,
દઈએ
sir.
બરાબર એ રીતે જ આખું મીટિંગ કરી દઈએ હા હા બરાબર હાલે હા હા
Manish sir, if you can please help me.
ઓ લઈ લો વધાઈ લો બરાબર
Thank you.
Done, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Right. So if you see here, this is an exam key that is generated. So this is very important, right? So you have to copy this exam key and circulate it amongst your students. So now what will happen is, if you if you copy this key here, copy exam key, and I try to access exam.net as a student, right? This will ask me to enter the exam key, enter it here, and say next. So it will first ask me, it is a highly secure exam. It will require you for a secure exam browser to be downloaded. If you have not downloaded, then go about the download. It is itself showing the instructions, right? So for Windows, this is the installer that you need to download, and then you can give up this exam. So you first have to download the installer because I've created in a secure browser mode, and then you can take, right? I have launched the secure exam browser on my system, so it will work for my system. Now, if you want to see where on the site can you uh, look for the exam browser, I'll just tell you that. In the support section also, you can look for the exam browser. So there is no restriction on adding number of students. All students who have access to this exam key will be able to access this exam. Now, there was this one exam that I conducted already, and a student took this exam. So on the surveillance result, I can see there one student started and ended the exam, and you can have other kind of functionalities with this exam. You can download PDF or Word file of all the students who have taken up exams. You can have the entire report listing at your end. Now the exam that you have created, if you have to set up time limit or certain additional settings, edit content and settings, right? So this leads up to the same page that where we were. If there are any settings that you need to change, if I want to now make it to allow any browser, I can do that. I no longer want a safe browser exam, right? So if I copy this key now and begin exam, it will allow me to access. Right. So these are the different, it is as simple, these are different options that you have with the safe exam browser or with exam.net. Simply you either create an exam, view exams in your exam list, and view the surveillance result, the amount of students who have taken up your exam, right? So this is a simple demonstration of exam.net. There is nothing more very technical to this software. It's very, very user intuitive. If you want to, there's a lot of support and a help section. Support is the same support pages. If you have any FAQs relating to taking the exam or after the exam, how are exams closed or created, all these options are available with you here. Even you have certain video tutorials that how can the student take an exam or how can you monitor an exam, right? And if you want certain additional information, it's available right here about exam. Till during 2020, this is really expanded its outreach in many countries, and they are resorting to exam.net for conducting examinations. If your question paper is based on network analysis, then you can add an exam simply like the way it is done. It all depends how you want to upload your question paper. So if I as a teacher want to set up a new exam, and either I want to have digitally entered questions, or I want to upload a PDF file, or I want to explicitly type questions, all modes are available here in exam questions while creating a new exam. Any other queries?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Uh, Exam.net only blocks the other browsers and minimizing the windows, or
Yes,
it
sir.
can restrict also the remote monitoring apps like AnyDesk,
Remote monitoring apps like, sir?
AnyDesk, TeamViewer.
Okay, so you want video conferencing support also. So that is available within
Yeah,
exam.net. So you don't need to have any other applications running alongside exam.net. You can set up video conferencing within exam.net also.
okay.
Ma'am, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, ma'am, regarding this Google Classroom,
Yes.
in that one we can make exams, no? We can conduct exam, no?
You can create
In that,
quiz assignments.
yeah, quiz assignments.
Yeah.
In that one, no, if after preparing all these quiz assignment and all, whether we need to give the class code to the students or whether link only is sufficient.
No, you don't need to explicitly share the quiz assignment. The student just needs to join your class once, either through class code or you enroll the student. Then everything that you create in your class will be visible to the student. So if the student can view everything.
Manish sir, can you please, Mr. Rao? Manish sir. Manish sir. Venkat Rao sir, please mute yourself. Dr. Venkat.
Thank you, sir. So in today's session, I've been able to demonstrate certain LMS like Moodle, like Google Classroom, and then we have seen certain tools like mind maps, which help or aid in the blended learning process, and altogether a different application or an option for creating exams in a remote monitoring scenario such as exam.net. So I think using an amalgamation of these tools or probably picking up as and when upon your choice can be a good alternative for you to conduct teaching learning operations in a remote scenario in the advent of COVID-19. So if you have any questions, please mention in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to take up regarding any of the sessions.
Madam, regarding that exam, no, ma'am, actually tomorrow I have got an exam on 11 a.m. I have given the class code to the students. So thing is that now the student told me that they can directly enter. Actually, I have scheduled it for 11 a.m. tomorrow morning. But since I have given the class code also to them, so some of the students are telling that they can see the questions now itself.
Right.
Even before, yeah.
So the reason for that is, sir, the duration or the due date that you have given while creating the exam is still when the student can appear for the exam. So if I have given due date for tomorrow and I've created today and posted it, so you've not scheduled a post, you've actually posted it. So when you posted it, the exam will be visible. But till tomorrow, the deadline means tomorrow, after tomorrow, the student takes, it will be marked late. So you need to actually save it as draft or schedule the post. Now what you've done is you've already posted it. That's why the student is able to see. The deadline is tomorrow, fine. But the exam should also be posted tomorrow. So like we have seen, scheduling or posting an announcement or scheduling or posting an assignment, when you have assign section, right? So assign button, besides assign button on the top right, there's a drop down for schedule, assign right now or assign later on. So you have to actually assign or schedule for a later date. What you've done is you posted, so that is where they are able to see. Right, so like
Yeah,
we posted an announcement now, and we posted an announcement for saving as draft or scheduling on a later date. So to schedule on a later date, not post directly. Due date will only be the time limit after which they'll be marked late.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And if you have completed the exam, after the exam is over, you can always hide the exam from the students, right? Or you can make it invisible. You can take it off from the student visibility. So then after the due date also, student will not be able to see the exam. in Google Classroom. So in order to create, sir, a lesson plan or course outcome mapping in Google Classroom, you have to upload a file, right? So we have to create an resource, upload a file, a PDF or an image, whatever, and you can have your lesson plan created in a Word file published as a PDF, or you can even create your lesson plan or course planning in mind maps and upload that mind map file on your Google Classroom.
If you have any other query, then you can write in the chat window or can unmute yourself and ask. If there are no any other query, please confirm in the chat window so that we can wind up the session. That was the last session with Tanya ma'am.
Can we schedule the time of test in Google Classroom? Yes, sir. So you can set up the Google quiz as a quiz assignment, and you can schedule the assignment. Like you can post the quiz at a later date and not right away. So like the same functionality, like you schedule a post to a later date, you schedule an assignment to a later date. It is possible. You can ideally be planning your entire session in advance before the session actually starts, and slowly opening up material when you require. If a student has entered your Google Classroom using a class code, then in the People's tab, where you see the student listening, you can always remove the student as a teacher. PPTs will be shared by Vishal sir. I've already shared by them. Thank you so much, everyone. It was really nice over the past 1 week communicating and connecting with you all. I'll mention my email ID in the chat window. If you have any other queries, we can always connect.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving a valuable week to us. It was a wonderful sessions on the LMS.
Thank you,
And
sir.
it will be beneficial for all the faculty members to implement the LMS in their study and the learning system. Please accept the certificate on behalf of all the participants.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Manish sir, now you can close the session. Manish sir?
I think he's not in.